Being a marketer's no sweat. You just have to manage dozens of channels, launch hundreds of campaigns, score thousands of leads, and okay, fine, it's a lot of sweat. Unless you have HubSpot's AI-powered marketing tools to help you do all that and more. Get started at HubSpot.com/marketers.
Hello, Jimmy here from It's Only a Game with some thoughts at the midway point of the season, the Christmas period of the season. I think, unfortunately, as it's been alluded to, we're never able to get together for a podcast at this time of year. It's an incredibly busy time of year, as you all know, as I'm sure you're all in the same boats as we are. But yeah, just a few thoughts. I want to talk about briefly, and this is maybe not going to be a popular opinion for some of our listeners, and it's certainly not an opinion that I've put forward much during the time doing this podcast, certainly not in the last couple of years. But in light of recent results and sort of recent games, I do want to give some credit to the Premier League. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to look at it through the lens of my own team is doing, well, not awful, but we're a bit dull. I want to give credit where it's due, that we're seeing more results, more unpredictable games, more unpredictable results. We're seeing teams at the top end drop points. I still maintain on that the Liverpool will win the league quite comfortably. But I'm fully aware that my prediction pre-season was Man City, and quite a derisory way of explaining it on the pre-season podcast. But I think when you see City's run of form, when you see that Arsenal are dropping points against the likes of ourselves and Fulham, that Liverpool are dropping home points at home to Fulham, when you're seeing sides like Bournemouth play some of the top sides, becoming one of the top sides, Nottingham Forest in the top four as currently things are, you know, it's a lot more unpredictable than it has been in previous years, it feels. And yes, you always get a Villa or a Newcastle or a club that, a sizable club that's outside that bubble of six that breaks into the top four or top six or however. But I want to credit the Premier League. I will say the distribution of wealth is obscene, obviously, with all clubs. But we've seen a season where I think that's slightly caught up with some well-run clubs, your Brightons, your Brentfords, your Bournemouths are the obvious three to go to, but Forest, despite everything, under Marinakis, it's been chaotic with the points deduction last season. The players they've just scattergun signed over the last 2-3 years. We're seeing the stability of that now under Nuno Espirito Santo. And I think, whereas you look across Europe and you can pretty much predict who's going to be top of the league, Spain, it's Barcelona, it's usually one of them, Real Madrid. France is PSG. In Germany, it's Bayern Munich. Obviously, below Bayern is always a bit crazy. In Italy, it's currently Atalanta, so Serie A is a fantastic league at the moment, and I would recommend anyone who doesn't follow it already to go and follow Serie A this season. It's a lot closer than some of the other European leagues, a lot less predictable. But I do want to credit the Premier League for this kind of, potentially at the moment anyway, slightly chaotic way things have been. In terms of results, in terms of smaller sides getting results off the perceived bigger teams. I don't like the term big clubs and small clubs. I don't believe there are any small clubs in the Premier League. You don't get to the Premier League by being a small club. But yeah, some of the more fancied sides, the richer sides, despite their obscene wealth, are still not able to necessarily lord it over the sides that maybe have less money, less resources, and on the face of it, less talent. And I think that's brilliant. Obviously, at the moment, we're looking like a Liverpool and Chelsea title race, which I don't think anyone would have seen at the start of the season. I think now we're looking at it, Liverpool are just formidable, and Chelsea are up there almost despite themselves, the way they've been run over the last few years. But at the start of the season, a lot of us had City and Arsenal once again going for the title, and understandably so. So I do think that is very, very interesting for the Premier League to have. I won't say two different sides, because there's nothing different about Liverpool and Chelsea going for a Premier League title really. If you're old enough, you remember Chelsea being dominant, remember Liverpool obviously under Klopp, that very recently being perennial title contenders, if not title winners. It's not as if we've got a title race between Forest and Brighton, which is the one we all want to see, let's be honest. But yeah, no, credit to the Premier League at this current stage, where it may all end up the way that we all sort of predict, with the same sort of 4, 5, 6 clubs at the top end of the league. You don't know. But at the moment, there's a lot to be said for it being a bit more random than expected. The bottom end, I think Southampton being down there is not a shock. The way in which they've played, obviously at the time of recording, Russell Martin's only just been sacked. I think it's a hard one, that. Is it harsh? I think it's slightly harsh on Russell Martin in that he's come up with this, he's got this team back into the Premier League, which is what he was tasked with doing when they went down, playing a certain style, a very expansive style, play up from the back, which is what they hired him for in the Championship. He did that, he got them up probably against everyone's expectations, certainly in terms of the playoff final. They were very much seen as the fourth team out of the four, Leicester, Ipswich, Leeds and Southampton, in terms of likely to go up. But they did it on the day at Wembley, went up, and almost you feel that if they hadn't gone up that game in May, and if Leeds had gone up, that maybe you'd see Russell Martin and Southampton at the top end of the Championship this season, almost certainly. He'd still be in a job, he'd still be flying high, playing great football. The likes of them, Sunderland and Sheffield United would be battling out at the top of the Championship, whereas you'd suspect Daniel Farke and Leeds would be kind of where Southampton are. I think so. He's a victim of his own success in that respect. It's a real shame. I think he's a good manager. He likes to play football a certain way. It's a certain way that now all the coaches from ex-pros are brought way through their pro licence playing a certain way. We've seen it with Vincent Kompany at Burnley. We're going to see it with other coaches as well coming up. That the big concern is that are these coaches going to end up getting sort of caught in limbo, where they're almost too good for the Championship, not good enough for the Premier League, where the style of play with the players they've got can only get them so far, and then they get sacked. I mean, obviously, Kompany's gone to Bayern Munich. Maybe Russell Martin's gone, well, if I keep playing this way, we might go down, but hey, I might get a big job. Might be a Dortmund job, or I don't know, an Atletico Madrid job, or Barcelona job at the end of the season. I highly, highly doubt, and certainly now, but I highly doubt anyway, if Russell Martin had kept his job at Southampton, that there's going to be a big European giant come in because, hey, he plays pretty football the way we want to play it. It comes down to, you look at Southampton's squad, does that squad stay up? For me at the moment, no. I know their one win of the season came against Kelsapri's Everton Football Club. Not a shock there. We always lose down there, but I think he should have been willing to be more flexible, but also it's been kind of harsh that he's been hired to do a certain thing, play a certain way. He's done that, and then they've sacked him because clearly the goalposts have shifted in the Premier League. The chasm, as Southampton put themselves, the gap between the Premier League and the Championship is so vast. It is. I still maintain it's probably the biggest gap between any two leagues in the English league system. Although I heard a stat today, I think, of the 8 playoff winners going from the Championship down to the National League North and South last season. I think only one, which is Andy Woodman of Bromley, who is still in the job. And I think that shows, again, that could be a whole podcast discussion about the Football League and the Premier League and the gap between divisions, but it shows the gap between the National League and League Two isn't as pronounced, or isn't as clear, and isn't as chasmistic, that's not a word, as maybe some of the other divisions across the Football League and non-league. But hey, I think he should have been willing to adapt more, but hey, he's got his principles and he thinks I'm going to stick by my principles. That's that. And so Southampton down there, much to probably no one's surprised. I think Wolves are a bit more of a shock, especially now that there's talk of Vitor Pereira coming in, who is quite a volatile character. And one thing they don't need at Wolves at the moment is more Portuguese-speaking volatile characters, given the way the last 2 ends of their games have gone against Ipswich and previously West Ham. The defeat to Ipswich, I've seen the goals back. It's poor. I mean, it's poor. And I've made a point of going back to watch a lot of the Wolves goals they've conceded. Defensively, they're all over the place. They really, really are. I'm not one of those football fans that will watch my team play against them and judge my entire base of a football team on the 90 minutes they played against the team I support. It's poor. Whether that's down to O'Neill's management, whether that we'll soon find out, whether it's down to the players they've got, whether they just haven't got the attitude, whether they've got a real gap with young players that are not quite ready to come through yet. But then you've got the likes of, and I don't like to talk ill of this player because he's a very, very good player and he's been a legend in the Premier League, in my opinion. But I know Greg and many other listeners will have a special place in their heart for this player. But Craig Dawson, he's 35 now, which makes me feel old because we're in the same school year as him. He's not getting any younger. He's had a fabulous career in the Premier League across various clubs: West Ham, Wolves, West Brom, Watford. But it is his time as a Premier League defender coming to an end potentially. And then who's there? The kind of that kind of age range of, say, 26 to 30 odd, 32, that can be a leader at the back. There seems to be a lot of leadership, square pegs and round holes. Nelson Semedo is not a full back. He can't defend. He's a wing back, and Ike Nuri on the other side is very attacking. They seem to be very exposed down the wings because the full back's bomb forward. Avita Pereira's got a big job on there to get the best out of that squad. Gary O'Neill, I rate him as a manager. I don't think he's the most glamorous manager. He's obviously did a good job at Bournemouth. He did a good job to keep Wolves up last season, but their end of season, last season form was poor, and this season that team they've got on paper should not be on 9 points currently as things stand. As for the rest of the relegation, it's looking kind of as you would have expected. Ipswich have surprised me. I mean, I knew they'd be okay. They remind me of Luton last season, not in terms of where they play, but the fact that no one fancies them to do much after a bit of a surprise promotion. But the reality is they're a lot better than maybe the sum of their parts. There are a lot of players there that still played in League One back in the day, 2 years ago. For example, was Jack Taylor scored the winner the other day at Wolves, and it was his first goal in about 3 years maybe, and his last goal in professional football was for Peterborough against Barnsley in League One. He also joined him and Sammy Smodics now, both scored a goal in every one of the top 5 divisions in English football, which is some stat really. There can't be many footballers who've done that. So, yeah, I mean, they've got a good team spirit about them. That everything that at the moment Southampton and Wolves don't appear to be. They seem to be quite happy where they are. Obviously, they don't want to finish in 18th as they are now, but they're quite happy to be where they are, given the circumstances of back-to-back promotions from League One up to the Premier League in 2 years. They're just hoping they can get as many points on the board, and that would be enough. I mean, from there, then you're looking at, obviously, Leicester. Again, they're down there. I thought they'd be okay. I still think they'll be okay. I think Van Nistelrooy's a good manager. Poor result of the weekend against Newcastle. Gary Lineker himself's come out and said he's very worried as a boyhood Leicester fan, ex-Leicester player, of course. He's very worried about Leicester. I think Newcastle are just really good. I think Isak's absolutely unbelievable. And I think the likes of Gordon and Guimaraes, are 3 of the best players outside of maybe the current top 4. 3 of the best players on form currently in the Premier League, and are just wonderful players. I think Newcastle are a bloody good side, and I think you go there. Look, if they'll be ruthless, they will get you that way. They've got that ability to do that of Newcastle, and they're a blooming good side. And I wouldn't be too worried if I was Leicester City. I think there was going to be concerns. I think the Leicester fans didn't like Steve Cooper the way he played. I don't think Steve Cooper being quite a successful ex-Nottingham Forest manager helped too much with the local rivalry that goes on down there. I watched the Leicester game at home to Forest on a Friday night a little while back, when you've got Forest fans singing Stevie Cooper's name. It's not good, is it? I know Forest have gone on to have a really good season so far, but it reminds me when Liverpool fans were singing Rafa Benitez at the Goodison Derby in about 2021, whenever it was, and we lost 4-1. You go, it's not good when your former club's fans are coming back to your new ground and singing your name because they're beating you handsomely. It's never a good look. By the way, neither is kicking off on the fans, kicking off on the players, which other managers have done this season and found themselves getting the chop. But I think Leicester, I think will be okay. You've got us, so I'll get on to us. I don't want to go too much about Everton because there's really not that much to say. And then you've got other sides, West Ham, Palace, could they get sucked into it? Who knows? I think West Ham have got enough quality to get out of it. They keep picking up the odd little result where you think, actually, their win at Newcastle the other week was like, bloody hell, they're actually quite good. But then and the winner home to Wolves, obviously. But then they have results where you go, are these absolutely hopeless? I don't know. The same with Palace, where they just have the odd win where you go, or the odd result where you go, bloody hell, there's actually a good side here. But then they'll get absolutely, they went to Brighton, which the derby that's not a derby, by the way. Sorry, Brighton fans, and I might have some Brighton listeners. I love Brighton over Albion, but you don't have a derby, you have a rivalry with Crystal Palace because there's no locality. You know, if you're going to put it was it the A23 rivalry or something it's called? I mean, you could name it after you could name any motorway or a major A road and probably find a derby along there somewhere. But no, seriously though, you know, Palace's result at Brighton was a hell of a result because Brighton are a bloody good side, and for them to go there and play the way that they did and to nullify Brighton, you know, kind of let Brighton have the ball and then just kind of hit them on the counter attack. Yeah, it's a blueprint for how clubs can go to the Amex or play against Brighton when you're sort of lower end of the Premier League and get a good result. If you're going to talk about, I believe, you know, what do you wish for? What would Father Christmas at this time of year? Very festive, obviously, time of year. What would I wish for him to give the club I support? Look, I've seen someone the other day from Everton's social media celebrating the amount of clean sheets we've kept, how it's up there with some of the highest clean sheets in Europe in the top 5 leagues. Pickford's clean sheet record now of all time Everton clean sheet holders is I think within the top 5 of Everton goalkeepers, I think. Look, I'm not doubting that defensively we've after a few absolute cock-ups, you know, the Brighton game, the Tottenham game, the Bournemouth game. Okay, Man United away was a shit show. You know, there's been some horrendous games this season. I don't think we're surprised by that. After a few cock-ups, that we've also had a few 0-0s. We ground it out away at West Ham, away at Arsenal. There are others as well. I'm sorry, who's celebrating the amount of clean sheets we're getting when we're 16th in the league and only I think 3 points with the relegation zone? We need goals to be scored. Now, I'm not asking for a striker because I don't think PSR will allow us that. What I'm asking for is for some players we've currently got. I mean, Calvert-Lewin, Beto, you know, McNeil, who's a forward-thinking player, and Jai, who started quite promisingly and has just drifted out. There's talent there that you think, come on, please. We scored 4 against Wolves. Granted, they're not great at the moment, but come on, can we just score some more bloody goals? Because if we can, you know, keep up the defensive solidity, score some more goals, we'll be clear of this relegation stuff by March. But I'm not convinced. It's dull. It's turgid. I don't even care if it's long ball. If it works, if it's effective and it's done effectively, and you win games and you score goals playing long ball, direct football, that's fine by me. I think in this modern era where everything's got to be a certain pretty way, it's about winning games of football. I don't care how you play, just win the fucking games. Sorry for swearing. So for me, score some goals. Give us play. It's like Space Jam. You know, harness the magical powers of some of our players, score some goals in the new year after Christmas, preferably before Christmas. We've got Chelsea at home before Christmas. That's going to be a disaster. But yeah, goals is the most important thing. It wins you games, it gets you away from the relegation zone, it gets you in a comfortable position, which is all Evertonians really want to be in, despite the off-field stuff that could be going on. It looks like it's set to happen with the Free King Group, who currently own Roma. All we want to be is in a comfortable position in the league going into the new stadium in 2025. We don't need to be in Europe. We don't really want to be in Europe. We don't need to be right up there challenging for trophies and whatever else. Which is not going to happen, obviously. We just want to know that we're not also going to be faced with a championship game on the opening game of the season in the new ground. So that's my wish for us for Father Christmas. I know he probably won't oblige. He's got more important issues to deal with, like, you know, poverty and hunger and just general wishes of children as well, rather than some 34-year-old man who just wants to see his team score more goals. But yeah, that's all from me. So that's my thoughts on just the Premier League. I mean, look, there's so much more I can go into across the Football League, the non-league and Europe. But look, there's only so much time we've got. If you have any questions, you can ask me directly at JND _90, I believe my X handle still is. I'm still on there, not on Blue Sky yet. I don't doubt it'll be a matter of time. Maybe the new year, you know, find me on Twitter, whatever it's called, Instagram, Facebook. Any questions you want to know personally from me, please do. I'm sure you've got better things to do with your life, but hey, we could have some good conversation, some interesting dialogue. I don't know. But yeah, remember to listen and follow to It's Only a Game podcast on all of your podcast listening devices and networks, Spotify, Apple Podcasts and others. There are plenty out there. And follow us on social media. And thanks very much for listening. Last thing is to wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year if we don't speak before then. Take care, everyone. Bye for now.
Hello, everyone. I know I've not been on for a little while, so I do apologise for that. And it's got nothing to do with my team's stonking form. We'll come on to that in a little while. But yes, just wanted to, first of all, wish everyone a happy Christmas and the very best for 2025. And yeah, hopefully we'll get the gang back together for a more traditional podcast in the early new year. Just moving on to football very briefly, and I will keep it very brief. I think at the start of the season, I made a prediction that Tranmere would get promoted. I think I may have overestimated our team's ability. And famously looked at our signings on paper rather than that great big green thing that we all sit and stare out at every Saturday and the occasional Tuesday night. Something is amiss at Prenton Park at the moment. Well, lots of things are missing. It's very difficult to pinpoint exactly what is needed. I think it's very difficult to pinpoint this season's failing so far on one kind of individual section or department of the club. There's a lot that's gone wrong. And for any Tranmere fans listening, there was a Q&A with Mark and Nicola Palios on Friday just gone. Some very interesting listening, not to kind of cancel out lots of the questions and things that were asked, but obviously we were rumoured to be being taken over by Rihanna's boyfriend, A$AP Rocky, not too long ago, all over BBC, Sky, etc. And it really seemed to be gathering some traction, and then the rumour was that the takeover had fallen through. Mark has since said that the takeover hasn't fallen through, but obviously he can't confirm who the prospective new owners are. Because of the NGRs. Is it an NGR? Have I got my acronyms muddled up again? Basically like the disclosures and so on that are in place. But he seems confident that a takeover will take place in the first quarter of the new year. The concerning side to that being, obviously, that is post the January transfer window. He did allude to, potentially if this takeover is, a done deal and it's just waiting in terms of paperwork and things to be formally signed over, that there may be a way in which the new owner could potentially back us in January. I'm going to be totally honest. I fear that if we're not backed in January and if we don't get the recruitment right this time around, we may well find ourselves in the conference next year for the 2025-26 season, which would be absolutely disastrous. As a club, when we dropped out the last time around, we said that could never ever happen again, and it was the steepest learning curve I think the club has ever faced in its 140-year history. And yeah, it's everything at the minute around the club is very, very negative. I think fans are voting with their feet. I feel like we're being ripped off again and just being taken for granted. We're one of the most expensive season tickets, not just in League Two, but also in League One, with yet again nothing to show for it. According to Mark and Nicola on the Q&A, this squad is the highest budgeted squad that we've had in the 10 years that they've been there. I would love to know who the high earners actually are, and B, what they're actually earning. There's two, maybe I'm being a bit harsh saying two, there's a handful of players at a push who, if it were me, would be there for the remainder of the season and beyond. The rest of them, there's not a player in that squad with any kind of relationship with the fans, a rapport, a desire to see them do well. There's just nothing. And there's been some lacklustre performances, but there's been some performances where you just feel as fans you're just being laughed at. Like, that not only are they not turning up, and not only are they playing the same tactics and the same, I can't even say style of football, they're just there, standing in their kits. Bar Luke McGee, goalkeeper. Potentially Sam Finley, who I think is fair to say has had more good games than bad, and he's only just come back, obviously, from a long-term injury. I'm going to put Connor Jennings in that bracket. He always lives 100%. He's had some very ropey games, but I think it would be unfair to pin anything on him individually because he's definitely carried us through a few games. And the occasional flash of brilliance from Omari Patrick, who has this wonderful ability, as most Tranmere players seem to have, to go missing for 4 games and then turn up and then go missing again. I don't know. Maybe we should start to call them like DPD or Yodel. The missing parcel occasionally arrives where it should. Yeah, it's not been great. Atkins, I would love to see him do well. You can see he's passionate. His hands are tied. I think he's got to take responsibility for a lot of the recruitment, because remember, in the role that he had, obviously, before he took the reins as manager, he was in charge of that, and the recruitment has been absolutely atrocious. So that is definitely something that needs addressing. There was a list, which I will try and find and forward on to Greg as he's editing this together, that was shared on a fan forum of all of the strikers that we've had, with the exclusion of Andy Cook, James Vaughan and James Norwood since the Paliosas have come in. The number of strikers that we have had, astronomical, and the goal return from them, horrendous, absolutely horrendous. And we seem to keep trying to sign the same style striker that just does not work. I don't know what's going wrong. I don't feel like we've had a midfield for 8 years. I feel like centre-backs, we never play 2 strong centre-backs together. There's always one dropped to play, a weaker or a more susceptible to error centre-back. We never have a good, strong, solid centre-back pairing. Right and left-backs, lacklustre. Again, I think we were spoiled a couple of years ago with Cogley and my head's gone completely blank. They went to America and then came back to Stockport. I'm having a conversation with myself now. Ethan Bristow. We were spoiled to have the 2 of them in one season, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't expect more from the players that you do have. And again, at the minute, they're just not functioning. They're not playing well at all. I'm going to stop the rant, as I feel like 7 minutes 38 seconds of me talking waffle about how poor our season has been is probably enough to spoil anyone's Christmas. So I will finish my segment as I started. I would like to wish all of our listeners a very happy Christmas. And if Christmas is not something that you celebrate in your household, or it's maybe a more difficult time of year for you, then I send you nothing but peace and good wishes. And remember, over the Boxing Day games, 28th to 29th of December games, and of course New Year's Day, it's only a game. Take it easy, everyone.
Greg from It's Only a Game podcast, Rochdale fan. Yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about Rochdale's form. Past month or so, you could say, past 6 weeks, it's been win, loss, win, loss, win, loss, or it feels that way anyway. I'm just going to have a quick look at the fixtures. I'm pretty sure that's what it's been like for us. Yeah, pretty much win, loss, win, loss, win, loss. So, I would like a bit of consistency, really. Everyone talks about how difficult the conference is. I'm gonna still call it the conference. It is the conference. How difficult it is to get out of, because there's only 2 promotion spots. But I think sometimes you need to put things like that aside and just sort of, just try and put it at the back of your mind in terms of trying to be consistent. I know it's difficult in terms of fans' expectations versus, results and what is possible and what isn't. That can't always be, football clubs can't always manage the expectations of fans, things like that. I just fancy a bit of consistency, really. We're still in the playoffs. We had a great result last night. Well, a good result, beating Tamworth 3-0, and obviously we got the clean sheet in there. But we didn't really. It seemed as if we turned it on soon as Tamworth had a man sent off. I think 3 goals came after the red card. That rings a bell, or most of them did. So obviously that was the domino effect, that got us, playing football almost, you could say, to a degree. Yeah, I think we're doing okay. We just need the 2 wins back to back, or the 3 wins. We need to be building momentum, really. I know it's nice to be winning games, out of doing 2 out of 4 or something like that. But we do need to be on the front foot with a lot of these teams. It shouldn't take a red card against Tamworth for us to be, cracking on with playing football, with all due respect to Tamworth. I think they were pipped to be relegated at the beginning of the season. I remember that. It shouldn't take a red card for Tamworth to go down a man for us to, crank up a gear. We should be on the front foot all the way, really. I don't know, that's maybe not realistic in terms of being able to do that every game, but I don't see why we can't attack these teams straight off the bat or just go for it, and make the most of Ian Henderson. This is Ian Henderson's last season, possibly the greatest player we've ever had, definitely in the top 3. His box office goals, fantastic. We all know what Ian Henderson brings. And even even when he's not scoring, he does contribute. So I've noticed that Jim chucks him on for 20 minutes, call it 10, 15, 20 minutes, whatever you want to call it. And the defenders follow him and he just takes them away from the game slightly. Like he just I noticed it a couple of weeks ago. He sort of drifts and they follow him and he makes the openings for Rodney or somebody else. I can't remember who it was specifically, but one of our lads were trying to get the ball to Henderson, but Henderson's gone wide, dragged the defenders with him, and the lad who's got the ball for us, he just thought, right, okay, well, there's a gap here, I'll just keep going, and then scores. So it's not necessarily that Ian has to score every time. He's just smart with his play, and I think we need to make the most of him, absolutely make the most of him. Because when he's gone, I don't know where the creativity is going to be coming from, or that sort of wise head of, it's like a nuance almost, isn't it, in terms of just the little things. I don't know where that's going to come from. We can be quite visceral as a team sometimes. It can be quite smash and grab, and it can be a bit eggy in terms of we have to concede sometimes to then crack on and play football, or we can't just coast through a game comfortably sometimes. So that would be nice if we could try and fix that. We're still in the playoffs. It's difficult. We've got teams like Oldham are in there as well. And then you've got the teams like Altrincham that are on the up. Generally speaking, as a club, they are on the up. They've got, a decent enough fan base. And last year, I think they were in the playoffs, weren't they? They'll be trying to keep that up as well. So I appreciate it isn't easy to stay in the playoffs, but you've got teams like York City who got a lot of time for York City, traditional team like us, bottom 3, bottom 4 league side, I would call them. Your traditional League 2 team, I would like to call York, like ourselves. Got a lot of time for what they're doing. I think they're still up there. They've got Trevor Sinclair still, I think. But yeah, I understand it's like for like sometimes when we play York, because they are historically like us somewhat, so those games might be a little bit more difficult than playing your Tamworths, where we can beat them 3-0. But I think we should be beating Tamworth 3-0, and we should be beating teams that are in the bottom 8, bottom 6. We should be beating them 2-0 convincingly, or at least getting a goal and winning the game. I don't know if that's... I don't think it's much of an ask, really, because it's not fantastic quality of football. League 2 isn't fantastic quality of football. League 1 might be. I don't know what League 1 is these days. I'm well out with League 1. But we just need to maybe just be a bit more confident in our style of play and just sort of believe in ourselves a little bit. I know we can go on a good run. We did go on a good run early in the season. We were winning 2 or 3 or 4 or something like that. We just need to replicate that and just sort of not be arrogant, but at the same time just believe in ourselves that we can, these teams, we can be beating them, and just be, confident in that. I don't think it's a big ask, but sometimes it seems like it's a big ask. We get beat by teams like Wealdstone and you think, blimey, we should be beating them. I know, all due respect, we're in the same division, technically same ability, but when you've got the likes of Ian Henderson and Rodney, and we've got a decent enough budget now to be competing with the teams at the top. There's no question of that. Since the Ogdens took over, we are more stable than we have been since pre-COVID anyway. The stability is there now. We need to capitalise on the stability of the football club and in its current guise of what we are now. Everything's okay now. It would seem we need to sort of capitalise on that and just go and just get up the league, get out of this division. I know it's nice to, whatever, be respectful to other teams, other players, but we need to be getting back where we belong. We need to be in the Rochdale division, which is what I call League Two. We need to get back there. I know every team has ambition and wants to do things, but we really do. We need to do it. I've got no real gripes with Jim. I just think sometimes he can be a little bit naive and he can be a player sympathiser. So every time when we get beat and you hear the post-match interview with Jim McNulty, he really, really, really sympathises with the players, and and he never really seems to. I know he has to be on their side to a degree, and he has to be complimentary or whatever, and he needs to maybe keep things behind closed doors if he has any issues with the players. I understand that, but sometimes in his interviews he really comes across as a player sympathiser about how things are so difficult and how being a player is this, and I feel so sorry for them because they've given 100%. They should be giving 100% every game. There's no question of that. That should be bare minimum. That should be absolute bare minimum that they are giving 100%. So when he says these things, I don't know. It's like going to a restaurant and getting good. The staff are polite. Or something. That's the bare minimum, isn't it? When you go to a restaurant, you shouldn't be hoping for that. That should be part of it. It should just be politeness almost. That should be part of it. I don't know where I'm going with that one, but it shouldn't be an ask to be giving 100% for a football club that are in a good position financially. Good owners at the moment. The Ogdens are doing okay. It shouldn't be an ask to get them to play football when, at the moment they're getting paid on time, where when we had Jim Bentley, or I don't know who it was, we weren't getting paid on time and different things like that. All those things have gone now. We need to move forward with all this, stability of the club, get out of the division, and just generally, keep it up. We need to stay in the playoffs. We need to bother the playoffs. We need to hassle the playoffs. We need to be in there. Teams like Altrincham will be doing that with us. Teams like Oldham will be hassling us, and they'll be taking the mick out of us when we get beat by crap teams or whatever it is, as we do with Oldham, which is, that's part of the banter. I get it, but we need to be staying strong in this playoff position. Hopefully I'm going to get to a game over the festive season. I hope to see Ian Henderson play 20 minutes and the others. Obviously we've got some good players on the quiet. When they're all firing on all cylinders, we can go on a good run. We can go on 2-3 games unbeaten, and that's what it's going to take to stay in the playoffs. I'm not too sure if automatic. I think automatic. We're not going to get automatic. Can't see that happening. So yeah, that's my little rant about Rochdale. I hope you all have a wonderful Christmas. Just time away from work. Everyone's working really busy and really, relentless at the moment, isn't it? The Christmas build-up and deadlines and different things everyone's got going on. I wish you all a nice break away from work with your families and friends. And the football is a side note, isn't it? Really, during Christmas, everyone's got busy schedules. I'm meeting a few of my friends. We're taking Olivia out, and me and Shell are getting married in March. So it's all systems go at the moment in terms of our planning on our side, and that's probably why we've not done a proper podcast for a while, because we've been planning the wedding. We've got Olivia, who's a toddler, general life, general jobs, all sorts. But we will return in the new year with Matt, Jimmy, Dec and myself. We're going to do a proper podcast. This is just circumstantial, unfortunately, but we will be back. Just another side note as well, I appreciate people still listening. Fantastic, thank you for still listening. Please listen to the 90s Grumble podcast, which is Chris Jackson's podcast. All things 90s, fantastic laugh, nice bit of nostalgia for me. Grew up in the 90s. I was born in 87, but grew up in the 90s. But please listen to that podcast, fantastic, great laugh, great nostalgia levels, all sorts. They're doing a Christmas special about toys, Ninja Turtles, Power Rangers, PlayStations, all sorts of stuff. I think they mentioned about Blue Peter with Build Your Own Tracy Island, which I remember doing. That was a nice thing to remember. So yeah, thank you all very much for listening, and thank you all for supporting the podcast over 2024. We do this for a hobby, and we appreciate everybody listening. Thank you to all the guests, everybody that's contributed, and everybody who's downloaded and streamed and listened to the podcast. And I wish you all the very best for 2025. And please remember, it's only a game.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.